You've been chasing distance with every new driver, every premium ball, every swing tip you watched online. But there's one piece of the puzzle you never questioned: the shaft weight, and it's quietly stealing a full club from your bag without you ever noticing. Here's the belief most senior golfers carry: a lighter shaft means more club head speed, and more speed means more distance. The pro shop confirms it, the manufacturer advertises it. The fitting cart at your local shop pushes 50-gram shafts as the obvious choice for anyone over 55. But there's a contradiction buried in that logic that the industry doesn't want you to catch. If you've ever stood on the tee with a brand new driver, lighter than your old one, and felt your swing lose its rhythm halfway through the downswing, you know that quiet confusion when the promise doesn't match the result. The ball launches higher but lands shorter. The dispersion widens, and you're left wondering if your swing is simply fading with age. It's not your swing, it's the weight. The typical off-the-rack driver sold to senior golfers ships with a shaft weighing around 50 grams. The thinking is simple: less weight equals more speed. And for a 25-year-old with fast-twitch muscle fibers still firing, that math works. But for a golfer whose tempo relies on feel and timing rather than raw acceleration, a 50-gram shaft can actually slow you down. Here's why. When the club head is too light relative to your natural swing rhythm, your brain struggles to track it through the transition. Your body instinctively decelerates to regain control. The result is a loss of club head speed at impact, not a gain. You're swinging slower precisely because you bought lighter. Let me give you the numbers without inventing anything you can't verify yourself. Pick up a 50-gram shaft and a 70-gram shaft side by side. The difference feels minor in your hands, roughly the weight of 2 golf balls. But in the swing, that 20-gram gap changes everything. The heavier shaft loads the club head more consistently through the downswing. It helps you maintain your wrist angle a fraction longer. It keeps the club face square through impact, so next time you're standing in the fitting bay being told that lighter is faster, remember what those 20 grams did to your wrist angle and your club face. That counterintuitive truth is exactly the kind of hidden data the industry hopes you never test. Subscribe if you want to keep uncovering the system behind the price tags, the real variables that determine performance, not the marketing. And in the comments, type "load the club head" if you've ever felt that deceleration mid-swing and wondered why. For a senior golfer with a moderate swing speed, somewhere around 75 to 85 miles per hour, those micro-adjustments add up to roughly 5 to 8 additional yards of carry. That's the difference between landing on the green and ending up in the front fringe. That's a full club, less you have to hit on your approach. Now think about what you paid for your last driver. $300? $400? $500? You didn't just pay for the club head. You paid for a shaft that was chosen to fit a demographic average, not your specific swing. And that average shaft is costing you distance with every single round. If you've ever swapped drivers with a playing partner 10 years younger and felt how much more solid his club felt through the ball, that's the weight difference. His 70-gram shaft gave him stability. Your 50-gram shaft gave you the illusion of lightness. The equipment industry knows this. They've known it for decades. But the retail reality is simple. Lighter shafts sell better because they feel easier in the showroom. They're cheaper to manufacture. They fit a wider range of swing speeds because they require less precise fitting. And when the distance doesn't show up on the course, most golfers blame their swing rather than the hardware. Here's the mechanism that's really at work. It's not just about total weight. It's about swing weight, the balance point of the assembled club. A 50-gram shaft in a standard driver head produces a swing weight around D0. That's light for most mid-swing speed players. Your body has to work harder to feel the club head position. You lose the natural feedback loop that tells you where the club is in space. The fix is deceptively simple. A heavier shaft, 70 grams or more, shifts the swing weight into a range your nervous system recognizes. D2, D3. You don't have to think about the club head. You feel it. Your swing returns to its natural tempo. Your release point becomes more consistent, and the distance you thought you lost to age comes back, not from strength, but from alignment. Let me walk you through the evidence directly from the fitting world. When an experienced club fitter works with a senior golfer complaining of distance loss, the first variable they change isn't the flex. It's not the loft. It's the shaft weight. They move up from 50 grams to 60 or 70. They watch what happens to the ball flight, and in the majority of cases, the ball speed goes up even though the club feels heavier. The reason is timing. A lighter shaft forces you to manipulate the club head manually. A heavier shaft lets your natural swing mechanics do the work. The club delivers itself. You just saw that the club can deliver itself when the shaft weight is right. That kind of insight doesn't come from the fitting bay, it comes from understanding the system, and that's what this channel is for. Subscribe so you catch the next hidden lever that saves you both strokes and dollars. In the comments, write Dead Money. Everything we expose on this channel is in the Dead Money Golf ebook. 120 pages, $47. Link below. And tell me, what shaft weight did your driver come with? Think about the economics of this for a moment. You've likely spent $500 on a driver that came with a shaft working against you. You've considered a new fitting session. Another $100 to $200. You might have even bought a new driver entirely, hoping the latest model would solve the problem. But the real fix costs less than $50. A used 70-gram shaft from a reputable brand, pulled from another driver, compatible with your club head, can transform your ball flight completely. That's the forgotten principle at the heart of this entire system. The cheapest upgrade is often the one the industry never advertises because it doesn't involve selling you a new club. Here's the part that hurts. The fitting industry has known about the shaft weight effect for senior golfers since at least the late 1990s, when club makers first started collecting launch monitor data at scale. The data showed clearly that players with swing speeds below 90 miles per hour gained more distance from a heavier shaft, not a lighter one. But the marketing machine had already committed to the lighter is faster narrative. It was simpler to sell. It fit the demo experience, so the information stayed inside the fitting bays, known to a few savvy fitters and ignored by the retail floor. And golfers like you kept buying drivers that felt light in the store but leaked distance on the course. If you've ever left a fitting session feeling uncertain, like the numbers on the screen didn't match how the club actually performed on the next round, that's the gap between what the data shows in a controlled environment and what happens when your body takes over under real conditions. A 20-shot average on a launch monitor doesn't capture the fatigue of the 10th hole or the pressure of a tight fairway. The heavier shaft doesn't need to be perfect every swing. It needs to be consistent when it matters. And consistency is what builds distance over 18 holes, not peak performance on the range. Now let me show you the flip side. The same principle applies to your irons. Senior iron sets often ship with graphite shafts that are too light and too flexible for optimal energy transfer. The industry assumption is that seniors need help generating club head speed, so lighter shafts are the default. But the same mechanism is at work. An iron shaft that's too light for your swing loses the loading field that helps you compress the ball. You end up swinging with your arms instead of your body. The result is a weak, high ball flight that lands short and spins too much. The countermeasure is straightforward. Before you buy another club, before you spend $300 on a fitting that may not address the real issue, do this one test. Find a club with a 70-gram shaft. Any club, a friend's driver, a used club at the shop. Hit 10 balls with it. Pay attention to how it feels at the top of your backswing and through impact. If the club feels heavier, but your dispersion narrows, you've found the problem. You don't need to analyze swing speed graphs or memorize shaft profiles. Your body already knows the answer. The heavy shaft will feel wrong for the first 3 swings. Then it will click. And you'll realize that what you thought was lightness was actually instability. This is where the forgotten principle reveals itself completely. The golf industry has engineered a system where the default product for senior golfers is optimized for the demo experience, how the club feels in the store, not for actual on-course performance. The lighter shaft sells because it feels easy. The heavier shaft wins on the course because it works with your natural timing. The same logic applies to every component in your bag. The grip weight, the club head weight, the overall swing weight. Each variable is an expense the industry hopes you won't question. Each small charge compounds into lost distance and lost money. And the solution is always simpler and cheaper than buying new. That heavy shaft test is exactly the kind of overlooked leverage we expose in every area of your bag. The same principle that keeps you from bleeding money on gear that doesn't match your swing. If you want to stop treating your bag like a donation fund, subscribe. We'll show you what the industry hopes you never figure out. In the comments, tell us what shaft weight you're playing right now. Dead money. Everything we expose on this channel is in the Dead Money Golf ebook. 120 pages, $47. Link below if you want to unlock the full system. Here's the vision I want to leave you with. Imagine walking onto the first tee with a driver that loads properly at the top of your swing. You feel the club head in space without thinking about it. Your transition is smooth. The ball launches on a trajectory you recognize, not too high, not too low. It carries the hill, rolls out an extra 5 yards, and settles exactly where you aimed. You don't need a new swing. You don't need a new body. You just needed the right weight in your hands. That's the distance you've been missing. And it was never about age. It was about the shaft weight you were sold by a system that doesn't measure results the way you do. The next time you stand in the pro shop or scroll through an online fitting tool, remember that the lightest option isn't a shortcut to more yards. It's often a detour that costs you both distance and dollars. The real upgrade was always there, hidden in plain sight, a shaft that matches your tempo, not the industry's average. That's the system beaten. That's the distance recovered. And it didn't cost you a new driver. It cost you a single honest question about what weight your swing actually needs. The system that sold you that light shaft also sold you the idea that distance fades with age. But the fade was never in your body. It was in the grams you were told to trust. So here's the final, clean truth of it. The next time you address the ball and feel that familiar uncertainty, that hesitation just before you start your backswing, stop and check the weight. Not the flex, not the brand, the weight. Because a club that works with your tempo doesn't ask you to adjust. It asks you to swing. And when you finally swing that heavier shaft, the one that feels solid from the first takeaway and stays with you through impact, you'll feel the difference not in your hands, but in the ball flight. A trajectory you recognize. A landing spot you aimed for. A distance you thought you'd left behind. That's not age-corrected. That's the system finally beaten on its own terms. 1 gram at a time.